I never thought I'd be writing about something like this, but life has a way of surprising you. 6 months ago, I had what seemed like the perfect life: a great job in marketing, a beautiful house in the suburbs, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage. My husband and I had been together for 8 years, and I thought I knew everything about him. He was your typical laid-back guy who loved watching sports on weekends and ordered takeout more often than he should. Then everything changed. It started with small things. My husband, who used to joke about gym-goers being obsessed with protein shakes, suddenly became one of them. At first, I was happy for him. Who doesn't want their partner to be healthy? But something felt off. The man who couldn't be bothered to walk our dog around the block was now spending hours at the gym, sometimes going twice a day. Got to stay fit, he'd say with a weird smile I'd never seen before. His whole personality started to shift. Gone were his favorite old t-shirts and comfortable jeans, replaced by expensive workout gear. He even started using some fancy cologne that smelled nothing like him. I tried talking to him about this sudden change. "Is everything okay? You seem different lately," I'd ask, but he'd just kiss my cheek and brush it off with a quick, "Just trying to take care of myself, babe." But his eyes would never quite meet mine when he said it. The distance between us grew wider with each passing day. His phone was always face down now, and he'd take calls in another room. Our bank statements showed purchases from high-end sports stores and some restaurant I'd never heard of. The gym was supposedly just 15 minutes away, but his workouts would stretch to 2 or 3 hours. Traffic was terrible, he'd explain, or caught up with an old friend for a smoothie. The excuses piled up like dirty laundry, visible, smelly, and impossible to ignore. One rainy Tuesday morning, after another night of him coming home late smelling of that new cologne, something in me snapped. I decided to follow him to the gym. I felt ridiculous sitting in my car 2 rows behind his usual parking spot, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like some cartoon detective. But there I was, my heart pounding as I watched him pull in. What happened next made my world stop spinning. A woman walked up to his car, his personal trainer, Sarah. I recognized her from the gym's website where her smiling face promised to transform your life in 90 days. Well, she had certainly transformed mine, just not in the way advertised. They looked around quickly, and then he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but the kind of kiss that tells you everything you need to know about a relationship. My stomach lurched, and I gripped my steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. That night, while he slept soundly beside me, how could he sleep so peacefully? I checked his phone. The messages between them were like knives in my heart. "Miss you already. Can't wait for our next session. That new place we tried was amazing." They had their own little world, complete with inside jokes and secret meeting spots. I couldn't sleep that night or the next. My mind raced with questions and possibilities. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to shake him awake and demand answers. But something held me back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe something deeper. A desire not just for answers, but for justice. As I lay there in the dark, listening to his steady breathing, a plan began to form in my mind. Not a plan for confrontation, but something more satisfying. Something that would make them both understand exactly what they'd done. I was going to turn their little game upside down, and I knew exactly how to do it. The next morning I drove to their gym again. But this time I wasn't there to spy. I walked right in, straight to the front desk, and asked to sign up for personal training sessions. With Sarah. Walking into that gym for my first session was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Sarah stood there with her perfect smile and toned body, greeting me like any other new client. She had no idea who I was, and that was exactly what I wanted. If she had known I was her lover's wife, she might have seen the hatred burning behind my polite smile. "Let's start with your fitness goals," she said cheerfully. I wanted to say, "My goal is to destroy what you've built with my husband," but instead, I smiled back and talked about wanting to get stronger. The irony wasn't lost on me. As weeks went by, something unexpected happened. Training with Sarah was actually changing me, not just physically but mentally too. Every push-up, every squat, every drop of sweat felt like I was building something new from the ashes of my old life. My arms got stronger, my waist smaller, and surprisingly, my resolve harder. We started having coffee after our sessions. She'd tell me about her life, her dreams, even her past relationships. "I've made some mistakes," she said once, stirring her latte. I wanted to laugh at the understatement, but instead, I listened and shared my own carefully edited stories. Our friendship grew beyond the gym. We went shopping together, tried new restaurants, and shared secrets. Well, she shared hers while I kept the biggest one tucked away. There were moments when I almost felt guilty about my deception. Almost. At home, my husband noticed the changes in me. His eyes would follow me around the room, puzzled by my new confidence, my toned body, the light in my eyes that hadn't been there before. When I mentioned my amazing new trainer, never by name, he'd shift uncomfortably in his seat. "You seem different," he said one evening. "Good different?" I asked, enjoying his unease. "Just different." I noticed he was spending less time at the gym now. His late-night workouts became less frequent. The cologne he'd been so fond of disappeared. He started trying to plan date nights, something we hadn't done in months. It was almost funny watching him scramble to save what he'd already destroyed. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed confused by his sudden distance. "My favorite client barely shows up anymore," she mentioned during one of our coffee dates, trying to sound casual. I made sympathetic noises while celebrating inside. The more time I spent with Sarah, the more complicated my feelings became. She wasn't the villain I'd initially painted her to be. Yes, she'd made terrible choices, but she was also funny, kind, and genuinely good at her job. This made what I had to do both harder and more necessary. One evening, my husband tried to rekindle our old spark. "How about dinner at that Italian place you love?" he asked, his voice hopeful. I looked at him, remembering all the nights he'd spent with her while I waited at home. "Sorry, I have plans," I said casually. "Plans? With who?" "My boyfriend." The word hung in the air like smoke. His face went through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, fear. I grabbed my purse and walked out, leaving him standing there, finally feeling a fraction of what I'd felt that day in the gym parking lot. Once in my car, I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. "Hey, want to grab dinner tomorrow? I'm thinking that new place downtown. I have something important to share." My voice was steady, friendly, hiding the weight of what was to come. "Sounds perfect," she replied, completely unaware that she was walking into a carefully laid trap. Everything was falling into place. Tomorrow night would be the culmination of months of planning, of building trust while plotting its destruction. As I drove through the darkening streets, I felt a mix of emotions: anticipation, sadness, satisfaction. But mostly I felt ready to finally bring everything into the light. The restaurant I chose was perfect, fancy enough for a special occasion, but quiet enough for a dramatic scene. I arrived early, my heart racing but my hands steady. The black dress I wore was new, something I'd bought during one of my shopping trips with Sarah. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah walked in looking excited, probably expecting just another girls' night out. The smile froze on her face when she saw my husband walk in right behind her. He'd taken the bait when I mentioned my boyfriend. I knew his jealousy would bring him here. What's going on?" Sarah stammered, looking between us. My husband stood there, his face pale as understanding slowly dawned on him. I took a sip of my water, enjoying the moment. "Please sit down," I said calmly. "Both of you." They sat like scolded children, neither daring to look at the other. Just then my friend Mike walked in, right on cue. He was an old college buddy who'd been helping me gather evidence over the past few months. He sat down next to me, and I could see my husband's jaw clench. "I think it's time we all got honest with each other," I began, my voice steady. "Sarah, meet my husband. Honey, I believe you already know my personal trainer." The color drained from both their faces. Sarah's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. You're his wife?" "Yes." "Surprise." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You know, it's funny how life works. While you two were busy with your little affair, I was getting stronger, literally and figuratively." My husband tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "Don't. Just listen." I turned to Sarah. "You know all those personal things you shared with me? Those coffee dates, shopping trips, all those intimate conversations? They were real. That's what makes this so much worse. You were becoming my friend while sleeping with my husband." Sarah looked like she might be sick. My husband just stared at the table, his knuckles white as he gripped his knee under the table. "I've filed for divorce," I continued. "Remember that prenup you insisted on?" I asked my husband. "The one with the infidelity clause?" "Well, thanks to Sarah's detailed text messages, which Mike here helped me document, you'll be losing quite a bit more than just your gym membership." Turning to Sarah, I softened my voice slightly. "And you? I've already spoken with your gym's management. Dating clients is against policy, isn't it? Especially married ones." They were very interested in the evidence I had. The silence that followed was deafening. Around us, other diners continued their meals, oblivious to the drama unfolding at our table. Finally, my husband spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I never meant to get caught." I finished for him. Clearly. I stood up, smoothing my dress. I've already packed your things. They're in storage. The key is with my lawyer. Oh, and I canceled your gym membership. Sarah started to cry silently, mascara running down her cheeks. Part of me felt bad for her, but I pushed that feeling aside. You know, I said, looking at both of them, I should thank you. Without your betrayal, I might never have found my strength. I might have stayed the same trusting, naive person who thought love was enough. Mike stood up with me, placing a supportive hand on my back. Ready? He asked softly. I looked at the broken people sitting at the table. My cheating husband and the woman who'd become both my friend and enemy. They had lost everything, just as I had months ago in that gym parking lot. But unlike them, I'd rebuilt myself stronger than before. Yes, I said, picking up my purse. I'm ready. As we walked out of the restaurant, I felt lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I left my failed marriage, a complicated friendship, and the person I used to be. Ahead of me stretched a future I never expected. One where I was stronger, wiser, and finally completely free. The cool night air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I took a deep breath. It smelled like new beginnings. Mike squeezed my hand supportively as we walked to our cars. You okay? He asked. I thought about it for a moment. Was I okay? My marriage was over. I'd lost someone I'd genuinely started to care about as a friend, and my life was nothing like I'd planned. But somehow I felt more than okay. You know what? I said, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. I really am. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.